Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. With the Charlie Kirk assassination and suspect Tyler Robinson, one really interesting component to all of this that I think is going to become more important as the legal process heats up are Tyler Robinson's parents. Now, I've confirmed through sources that his family has been having virtual visits with him in jail, with Tyler Robinson in jail, virtual visits on like a tablet, roughly twice a week. In-person visits at the jail there in Utah don't really happen very much, and when they do, they happen behind glass. So I'm told these visits have been virtual. But what's interesting about the parents is, let's not forget that Tyler Robinson confessed to his parents. Um, at the end of the day, police say they did the right thing and turned him in. But now that the death penalty is on the table, how could that change things? Will they want to continue to cooperate with investigators and with the prosecution, or will they start to want to cooperate with their son's defense team? It's something I'm going to dig into, and it could be really important in all of this in this episode of Brian Enton Investigates. Hey guys, so remember again, according to the court documents, the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson confessed to his parents. And the docs say, I'm going to read you some of these in case, and I'm going to get into the new stuff in a second, but I wanted to sort of backtrack so we can all remember how this confession went down. The documents say Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed it looked like their son. The suspect's father also believed the rifle police suspected the shooter used matched a rifle that was given to his son as a gift, according to the documents. The father then reached out to the 22-year-old, asking him to send a photo of the rifle, to which Robinson did not respond. And that was all in the charging documents too. And then his father called Robinson and he implied that he planned to take his own life. His parents convinced him to then come to their house. The documents say as they discussed the situation, Robinson implied that he was the shooter and stated that he could not go to jail and just wanted to end it. His parents then asked their son why he committed this crime, to which he said, there is too much evil and the guy, allegedly Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. Is what the charging document said. The suspect's parents then actually pushed Robinson to speak with a family friend who happens to be a deputy sheriff, and then that deputy sheriff convinced Robinson to go and turn himself in at the sheriff's office, which is not in the area where the shooting happened. It's really on the other side of the state. And they went to the sheriff's office and he turned himself in. So the parents very clearly played a key role in his arrest. All those details and their account of those details is definitely going to be important if there is a trial. I mean, they are key witnesses here. And that's where it gets complicated now that Robinson is facing the death penalty, how his parents are processing that, reacting to that. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but will they end up helping the prosecution, or will they end up helping the defense? So I'm joined now by Clayton Sims, criminal defense attorney in Utah. I appreciate talking with you again, Clayton, and your time. I wanted to get your take because I've been very curious about Tyler Robinson's parents. They obviously helped him surrender, by all accounts, from police and organize this surrender. Um, but do you think they could flip in a sense now that this is a death penalty case?
No, it's interesting. There's a push and pull from both sides. So the prosecution would obviously want the family on their side because there's text messages between the defendant Tyler Robinson and his family. They would need witnesses to authenticate those text messages. But then the defense also would want the family on their side to save his life, to talk about that he's a good person, that he shouldn't be put to death, that his family situation was great. And so there's going to be both sides fighting for the family.
So how does that work? Like, which way will they go? Because again, now that obviously they, according to the police accounts, wanted to do the right thing and turn their son in. But now that that death is on the table, like, will they actually want to cooperate in the execution of their son?
Right. So both the defense and the prosecution has tools, if you will, to sort of sway the family to their side. The defense would pull on the family's heartstrings, say, hey, assist us in mitigation, help us save your son's life. That's important to you and your family. You don't want to see him on death row. Save his life. However, the prosecution has a tool. They could file obstruction of justice. They could file witness tampering charges if the family changes their statements. If they don't cooperate with the prosecution, the prosecution could suggest or threaten, hey, you could be charged. How much did you aid him? Did you harbor someone who's a fugitive? If you change your story now, you could be charged with witness tampering, tampering with evidence. And so there's a tool for the prosecution to put pressure on the family. I'm not saying they have done that, but it's there. That threat is there behind the scenes to get them to work with the prosecutor. The threat is very, very real.
Doesn't the game change though for the family when I hate to use the word game, but when death is on the table though? I mean, because even if you wanted to do the right thing, that doesn't mean you want to participate in the execution of your child.
Right. We don't know their level of participation. There would be down the road, if they show up at the preliminary hearing and they testify as witnesses, well, that could just be as a result of getting a subpoena, that they wouldn't, not respond to a subpoena, but what level of participation they do. The family would have to respond to a subpoena, but they don't necessarily have to go to the prosecutor office and talk for hours and facilitate help them with their case. And so is the family doing the minimum, or are they assisting the prosecutor? We don't know that yet. We will know later as things are revealed at other hearings what level of participation the family has.
We know that they have been, according to our sources, doing virtual visits with him about 2 times a week. What does that tell you? And if you were his criminal defense attorney, I mean, does he need to limit his contact with his family since they're sort of witnesses in the case?
He needs to realize that there is no privilege, there's no privacy in the jail, and those calls can be and will be recorded and turned over to the prosecution. Um, there will be no privacy. So those calls are subject to grandma requests, are part of the file. And so he needs to realize that when you have video jail calls, those calls will be turned over to the prosecutor. So I think that if there are discussions with the family, those could be made public.
If you were his lawyer, what would you be saying to his parents right now?
Well, you do need that support as a defense attorney communicating to your client. Look, you're isolated. You've never been in jail before. You're sort of detached from society and detached from your family. You do need that support. You need that support from your family. You don't need to talk about the case. And in fact, I would um, ask your client and your advice would be do not talk about the case. Talking about the case can jeopardize that connection. The prosecution could put a protective order in and say, hey, you can't talk to your family because you've been talking about the case. You don't want to put your family in that particular position. You could just ask them, how was Thanksgiving? What are we going to do? What are you going to do for Christmas? How are my siblings doing? Those are the things that you could talk about that wouldn't end up hurting you down the road. But you do need that support from your family. And so to not talk about the case actually might be freeing because that's probably dominating your thoughts. But it would be nice to ask your parents, hey, how was Thanksgiving? I'm sorry I missed it. What did you eat? Who was there? Those things are healthy and something that a defendant would need.
Do you think that he gave the parents specific information about the crime? I mean, obviously there was this confession, but how specific do you think it got?
Well, what's interesting about the parents' information everything they know about the situation is important. And what I mean by that is the timeline. Hey, even if he didn't tell you anything, did you see him during the days and time where he was supposedly in Salt Lake? So if the parent, they could theoretically have an alibi, but the absence of an alibi is also information. So if the parents are not willing to say, "Oh yeah, I saw him at the time of the crime," there's no way that he would have done that. Uh, so the absence of information is important. So what we think is important, but it's all important. It's all material. Did they see him during this time period? What did he have? And even his background. Was he a hunter? Was he familiar with firearms? What's his political beliefs? Would that have an influence on that? So understanding your son's political beliefs may not be important for you and I, but for this particular case, yeah, it's very important.
Do you think they'll have to testify at if there is a trial?
Absolutely. His parents would have to testify, most likely at a preliminary hearing, at earlier hearings, but certainly they would be forced to testify at trial.
So could they, in a sense, testify against their son at trial with the information they have, but then if he's convicted during the mitigation phase for where the death penalty comes in, could they then almost do the opposite and try to help him?
Well, they could just be honest about the position that they're in. They say, "Look, um, we love our son, and it's difficult for us to testify, but we will tell the truth. And this is what we know. We're not playing favorites with the defense. We're not for the prosecution. We're just here to tell the truth, what we experienced, and this is the information that we have. And we're presenting it without sort of judgment, without bias. We're just presenting the information that we have. It doesn't mean we don't love our son. It doesn't mean we don't care for him, but we're not going to alter information. We're not going to protect him in some way." That could be very, very powerful. And certainly it would be difficult for family members, siblings, parents, relatives, neighbors to come forward and testify, but there would be a requirement to tell the truth. And that could be helpful to the defense in the sense that if they build up credibility with the jury, and then they do say later,
Hmm.
"Spare my child's life," and we don't know their position, but if they do build up credibility with the judge, the jury could feel bad for the parents and say, "You know what, we would normally issue the death penalty. We think he's worthy of that, but it's going to hurt more than him. It's going to hurt his mom. It's going to hurt his dad. It's going to hurt other people as well. Let's simply give this person life in prison, um, as a, if you will, a gift to the parents for coming forward." So there's different strategies. The defense attorney may put a priority on saving his life. The defense attorney could put priority on getting a not guilty verdict. We don't know where they're putting their priorities, but in terms of a strategy, if your strategy is only to save his life, having the family come in and being honest could ultimately help you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. So if they're honest during the trial portion and seemed like they were very cooperative with police and wanted to do the right thing and how terrible it was they had to turn in their own son, that then if he's found guilty, the jury may like them and feel bad executing their son.
Right, and the mother and father could communicate to the jury, "Look, this is painful for us. Is they're putting our son to death for the things that he has done, and there's a tremendous amount of guilt that a parent would have if that happened, and you can remove some of that pain from the mother and father if you simply give them life in prison." And so, as a gift, as a benefit to mom and dad for their actions, you don't give him the death penalty. So that could be part of the argument that's not explicit, but that's something that the jury would consider. Say, "This is horrific, that they had to come forward and testify against their son, and then he's put to death," and they feel that there's the mechanism of death, the way in which he's executed, they had a part in that, and so their willingness to participate in that is sort of compromised if they see their son ultimately in the death penalty.
Interesting. I guess I'm also wondering, like, when I cover trials and there's a defense witness or there's a prosecution witness, you can tell that they've met with that side before. They've sort of gone over their testimony. There's obviously like a strategy in place of how they're going to answer the questions, what direction they're going to go in. How would that work for the parents if they're sort of on both sides of this?
Well, again, we don't know what side they're on. They're potentially on the defense side. They're potentially on the prosecution side. They can ultimately assist with both sides and being used as a tool, if you will, by both sides by simply just telling the truth. It just depends on what element of their testimony you emphasize. So they may choose to sort of take a third path, which is to hire their own attorneys to be neutral in this, not being used as a tool for the prosecution, not being used as a tool for the defense. They can chart a path that's independent. They can hire their own attorneys. They can sort of simply say, look, I will honor all legal obligations. I will respond to a subpoena. If I'm under oath, I will tell the truth, but I'm not going to participate in the lead up to that. I don't have to meet in your office for the defense. I don't have to meet in your office for the prosecution. So they can choose a third path, which is being more neutral and independent.
Interesting. They told police that they had different political beliefs from their son, and that's been made public. How could that come into play? I mean, could that be important to a jury?
Well, well, it's clear that their motivation was political beliefs, and so they are just creating a distance and saying, "Look, we don't agree with our son's political beliefs, and we have a different belief system." Certainly, oh, oh, no matter what side you're on, you generally don't believe that assassination is the right path. That nonviolence is the way to communicate, and society is better if people just express their ideas and they're not killed for their ideas. So almost everyone agrees with that position. But certainly, generally, I think there's some tension between the parents' religious beliefs, political beliefs, and their son's beliefs.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, an assassination. This is really the level of political rhetoric over this case has reached an all-time high. I mean, there's been threats and there's been other forms of violence, and you've got, people who are obviously very upset about the assassination, and then you've got people who are like outwardly happy that it happened, which is crazy. How will all of this play into getting a fair trial? I mean, finding a fair jury. It just seems like this has gone off the rails.
No, there's certainly sort of it's interesting to see how we digest this. Some people were celebrating, we're happy that he was assassinated, which is just unbelievable. That and university students have been in trouble, and other people have been fired, I think, from their jobs, and there's been consequences to that. Um, I think that it's interesting people's reaction to that. Certainly, we have a First Amendment right to free speech. We have a First Amendment right to peaceably assemble. And everybody agrees to that, but in practice, what does that mean? Has Charlie Kirk said things that are probably regretful, inappropriate, not necessarily the best? We all have. But we don't have cameras following us around. I'm old enough. I'm in my 50s. I'm glad there wasn't, cameras following me around in high school. I would have said some foolish things. I still do, but there's no one's necessarily recording me at all times. And so that's the difficulty here is that we're judging someone for their worst statements and not just accepting that's part of free speech, as part of making a mistake and moving on.
But in terms of the impact on a fair trial, do you think they can find fair? I mean, I'm not in Utah right now. You know the community. I mean, can they find? Do you think they can find fair jurors? Would there need to be a change of venue?
What's interesting is that change of venues are rare. Most likely, what will happen is there will be a larger than normal jury pool. what I mean by that is in a normal felony case, maybe you bring in 65 to 85 people, and then you seat a juror based upon that. You eliminate um, people, and then you seat a jury with that amount of candidates, if you will, for a jury. In this particular case, you could theoretically need thousands of potential jurors, and then you'd see that they would have a strong opinion one way or the other about Charlie Kirk. Says, no, I can't sit on this jury. It's interesting to think about this as a concept. What what if we had sort of John Wilkes Booth, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln? You had people, hey, how do you feel about Abraham Lincoln? Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? How do you feel about that? How would we seat a jury today if that was our case? So certainly people's backgrounds are important. And what gives people away, they're not necessarily allowed to ask somebody, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican? How do you feel about this? But they will ask sort of proxy questions. Where do you get your news from? Who are your news sources? Sort of questions like that would try to get to what your particular political beliefs were. They may ask about Charlie Kirk, but they can't, a judge may not allow specific questions about politics. That may be off limits, but you'd ask other questions.
Could they ask them whether they were fans of Charlie Kirk?
It's possible that would be it. Do you have strong disfavor for Charlie Kirk, or do you strongly agree with his positions? You may ask that. That's a potential voir dire question that you could ask the jury. So that may get into that.
Do you think this will definitely go to trial? I mean, like we talked last time, and you even have the governor saying that they're going to seek the death penalty. I mean, it doesn't sound like that's going to come off the table. Um, Although Erica Kirk made some comments where she didn't seem totally for it. Um, so I didn't think about that angle of it. But I mean, what do you, I mean, you think it'll go to trial?
It's going to be driven by the prosecution. What is their offer in this particular case? Are they offering to remove the death penalty? What are the conditions of his incarceration? So are they offering, hey, if you plead guilty, we'll house you in a local jail rather than the Utah State Prison, where there may be threats against you? And so there's really, whether the case will go to trial is going to be determined by the prosecution. And are they going to take a hard line? Are they going to say, no, death penalty is never going to be taken off the table? We're always going to seek death. If that's the case, then it is likely to go to trial. So the likelihood of this case to go to trial is going to be determined by the prosecution.
And what do you think? I mean, do you think they're gonna stick with the death penalty, not have a deal on the table? Like, what's your feeling?
I think it would be politically unpopular to remove the death penalty. But if you look at the costs associated with that, Erica Kirk has stated that she's not in favor of the death penalty. And maybe that's because takes a tremendous toll on her and her family. Imagine she's got young kids now. Death penalty cases take quite a long time. And her kids would be in their 20s, 30s, and then the execution is still pending. And so think about that, to live with that uncertainty, what execution date is there, in this case keeps brought up. And again, it's his life is focused on his death. So much of we hear about Charlie Kirk is focused on his death and not what he did during his lifetime. And maybe she wants the focus to be on the work that he did. He's a family man. They had a marriage. There's other things that are more important to her than the moment of his death. And so that's probably why she wants to move on.
Yeah. And maybe just doesn't want the weight of giving an opinion of whether someone should live or die is on her. You know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
it's a tough
Right.
call.
Right. That's a burden upon her.
Yeah.
And there is a belief, thou shalt not kill. That's a religious belief. So some people feel an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Some people rely on thou shalt not kill and are against the death penalty. So there's religious beliefs support both sides. that there should be consequences to your actions, and then other people feel like there should be forgiveness. And so it's interesting, and certainly she's free to change her opinion. She could next week say, "Oh, I have a different opinion," and certainly it doesn't have to be set in stone.
All of these theories going around that he's not the guy, that Tyler Robinson isn't the guy. There's tons of YouTube videos and people digging in and stuff that's a lot of stuff that's not true. Um, if you were the defense attorney for Tyler Robinson, I mean, are they just loving that? Is that helping them, or is that
It's
not good?
well, it's unclear. It's unclear whether the defense will try to get a not guilty verdict. And there's alternative theories. I think it does help the defense to create doubt. If there's missing videos, if there's questions, that creates doubt. And in this particular case, you have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but in a death penalty case, the jury may even ask for more. I mean, that is the highest standard, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but you really have to bring all of the evidence, leave no questions out there. So if there are questions, it could lead to a not guilty verdict, or it could lead to an improved offer. The prosecution could remove the death penalty out of fear that they could lose the case. So they may compromise their position based upon all these rumors that are out there, these alternative theories. Alternative theories may weaken their case, and they may give a more favorable offer. So it's not inconsequential. There are alternative theories. There are alternative suspects. There are alternative sort of timelines. And that does definitely help the defense.
Erica Kirk saying what she said about whether she wanted the death penalty, does that have any impact? I mean, do they? I know technically it's the prosecutor's decision, but do they take that into account?
Absolutely. The family's input is very, very important. It's not determinative, meaning that's not the end, but that's certainly a consideration. That's certainly a factor. If the family is not seeking the death penalty, then that should be a consideration for the prosecution. The opposite is true. If they were said, hey, the family does want the death penalty, certainly that would impact you as well. And so they should maybe pull back a little bit on the death penalty, and maybe consider honoring her wishes.
The fact that Tyler Robinson's roommate slash romantic partner is apparently trans, and obviously Utah is a pretty conservative place, a lot of Mormons. What role do you think that could play? I mean, in terms of the jury?
I'm not too familiar with his personal sort of living situation, but it would be that witness would be important because they would give a day-to-day sort of explanation of what he was doing during that time period. Was he absent during that time period? What was he doing in preparation the days before, the weeks before, the months before? And so that witness is going to be important. I think that the jury would look at that as somebody that has knowledge of his personal day-to-day sort of life. Their actual romantic connection won't necessarily be brought up. They may say, are you roommates? Do you know this person? Are you friendly with them? What's your position before this particular date? Yes, we were roommates and possibly romantic partners as well, but they won't get into the specifics of their relationship. But again, that's somebody who knew Tyler Robinson, knew his schedule, knows the most about him.
Couldn't that be important though, how close they were? I mean, this wasn't just a roommate. Like, wouldn't one side or the other want that to come out?
Well, I think it would be known. Um, they would say, well, what bed were you sleeping in? Did you have a
Right.
separate room? Did you sleep in that bed? Did you share meals together? The jury will figure out what is going on without actually asking about the romantic connection. So it will be obvious that what is going on without necessarily directly asking those particular questions.